Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. We caught up earlier today with Jamie Beck. He's the president and CEO of Filo Mining. They're a TSX-V listed gold, copper, silver explorer with assets in Argentina, South America. We ask him what his plans are for the company. The PFS numbers were huge, but the big so what is, what do they do next? Do they bring a strategic partner in? Do they go it alone? Do they sell it? Jamie talks us through their thoughts on that topic. And if you want our thoughts and opinions on the conversation and the company itself, you can find that at cruxinvestor.com/club, where you can also find detailed company reports and analysis. There are summaries from experts from around the world on a variety of companies and commodities, including gold, copper, and silver. We've got training courses on there to help you with your indulgence process. We've got summaries of all the interviews that we've done just to save you some time because we know you're busy. And if you want to join a thriving community of investors sharing their thoughts and ideas with each other in a nice, safe and friendly environment, free from judgment, trolling and abuse, you can join them at cruxinvestor.com/club. I think you'll really like it. And we'd appreciate your feedback too. So do give us a like, leave your comments below. We'll get back to all of you. And if you want to see precisely what we talked about today, do take a look in the description below. Jamie, how are you, sir?
I'm well, Matt. How are you?
Not bad. Surviving. What about you? Where in the world are you?
Well, I'm a delinquent father. As my kids are on spring break, I'm working away.
Good.
So they're out on the ski hill today.
Oh, beautiful. There's still snow this time of year.
Yeah. No, the hills that we're in Whistler and the hills stay open through May.
Oh, you got a bit of altitude there, haven't you? Helps.
Yeah, a little.
Yeah. So straight after this, you're getting your skis on, dashing out.
No, I'm right into board meetings after this. So you're warming me up.
Oh, you're the worst father.
We've got our quarterlies coming out on today, actually.
Really? Right. In which case, we better get on with it. So, we've not met before, spoken, and news story to us. So excited for that. But why don't you kick us off with a 1-minute overview, and I'll pick up with some questions after that.
Sure. So Filo Mining, we're advancing the 100% owned Filo del Sol project. This is growing to be a very large-scale copper, gold, silver asset. It's in Argentina, touching the border with Chile. We put out a very robust study on the uppermost oxide portion of the deposit, but the past couple of years have been super exciting as we've explored for the sulfides at depth and have some drill results coming up over the next few months. So it should be an exciting story to get involved with.
Fantastic. And 3 not too shabby commodities to be involved with at the moment. Obviously, copper price is going on a bit of a rip, and so is gold and silver until recently. So I guess that all helps. Can I just sort of bring you back to the start there? You've been working with the Lundin family for quite a few years now, but you've been involved with this story since its inception. Can you kind of spun out of NGX? So give us that whole background. Let's not try and understand.
Yeah, it's a great history, Matt. These projects were grassroots discoveries, and when I say these projects, Los Helados, Jose Maria, and Filo del Sol. At the time, Tenke Mining was advancing the Tenke Fungurume deposit in the DRC, and the DRC was in civil war. So they needed a bit of news flow, and they vended these projects into that company. And through a bunch of sort of amalgamations, Tenke got going again. They ended up in a company called NGX Resources, who ultimately made the discoveries on all 3 projects. And when NGX would raise money, they'd go out and drill off Jose Maria and Los Helados. They'd had 2 great discovery holes there, and Filo would get a couple of drill meters at the end of the season. So in 2016, we made the decision to spin these out, spin Filo out into its own company, which was a great move. It was NGX probably had a $200 million market cap. Filo was getting no value. We spun it out. Filo quickly ran up to about 200 million itself, and NGX didn't change. So effectively a $200 million dividend to shareholders at the time. And since that time, we've been advancing at Filo.
Right, the kind of ugly sister syndrome, it seems. So you had your moment in the sun, and that's kind of allowed people to sort of take note. So it's interesting. It does happen quite a lot. But let's talk about what you set out to do with that, though, because you spun it out, and that's just sometimes can be just a financial play, a financial game. But how serious are you guys about actually creating a mine here?
Pretty serious, yeah. The spin out and one of the reasons it was the poor sister was because it was just so big, so vast, and multiple different areas of mineralization that we were targeting. It was hard to come up with a effective exploration strategy without a significant budget. So, since 2016 now, we've probably been raising 20 to 40 million dollars Canadian a year. Putting that into the ground, we pieced together an initial resource on the oxides, which made its way into a pre-feasibility study in January 2019. And I think what sets Filo apart a little bit is it's got all of this exploration upside underneath with the potential to move forward on a slightly smaller project. So when you think big copper, gold, silver, Andean porphyries, they often come with the $3 billion, $4 billion, even $5 billion price tag up front to get up and going. And while, Filo's initial capital of $1.3 billion is not small, it certainly comes in a little more moderate than some of the others. So the opportunity here is to use the cash flows, call it, for the first 10 to 12 years of mining the oxides and ultimately move towards development of the sulfide project. And that sort of 1.3 billion range as well within the wheelhouse of the broader Lundin Group of Companies, and something that we think that, we could comfortably raise and start moving this project forward to construction.
Well, tell me about that, because obviously Lundin name has been long associated with, success in mining, but there's a lot of projects on the go right now. Is this kind of project that with that sort of capital, I appreciate the kind of slow start with a small start, cash flowing, and then allow you to kind of grow in a more cautious way. Is that sustainable for the group? How does it operate? Is this completely separate, and it's part of the group, but does it operate financially separately from the group, or is the pressure all back at HQ?
No, well, every single company runs independent. What ties us together is the family ownership, and Lucas and the family hold about 36% of Filo. So we have great support from the Lundin family, obviously, but the management teams are all independent. The board functions independently. We're on the lookout for Filo shareholders. Obviously, there's probably a bit of a master plan within the family and how they want to sequence some of these companies moving forward. But, Filo is a prime example of one that would do well with a deep pocketed partner. And if that's something that makes sense in the next, couple of years, then no problem.
Well, that's what I'm getting at, because if I look at the structure of the group, and sorry to bang on about the group here, but I think it's important in the context of what you're trying to do. You've got companies at different stages and therefore different financial needs. And I'm just wondering how much of each of these stories was underwritten by the Lundin family, or do they genuinely stack up, or does the Lundin family open doors to, being able to raise money easily? You raised a lot of money last year. You've raised a lot of money before that.
I mean, it's a huge mix, right? You look right at the top and you've got Lundin Energy or Lundin Mining. I mean, Lundin Energy is paying out massive dividends on some of these oil fields in Norway. Lundin Mining, obviously self-sufficient, generating huge cash flow and a super clean balance sheet. So it's really, I guess, then when you look down markets, Lundin Gold was, one to go a couple of years ago and did a great job getting Fruta del Norte off the ground in Ecuador. And now you've sort of got, at least in the mining space on the copper side, you've got Jose Maria, which is a few more years advanced than us, 12 kilometers up the road. So that'll be a focus towards moving to construction probably first. And then Filo will slot in behind that naturally, just as a result of where we are in terms of the engineering development, as well as making sure we've got all our environmental baseline work gathered. So there's sort of a natural staggering that occurs, and the family is going to be there to support, no doubt.
Right, and so let's put the other side of that conversation, which is there's a lot of kind of stranded companies. Copper is obviously a thematic which you guys are very, very much pushing forward, and as we've seen what's happening with the copper price and the whole EV thematic, so forth. There's a lot of sort of smaller stranded assets there. Does that financial acumen, that financial access allow you to perhaps go and build this thing up by making some more acquisitions, or are you very much focused on what you've got?
We're pretty focused on what we have. I think that support really comes into play in the years previously, in the past 5 years, let's say, when we've been able to raise money and advance these projects in a $2 copper price environment. So that as we start looking towards where things are moving today and moving upwards of $4, these projects are primed and ready to go. And I think that's probably one of the big misconceptions in this industry is just the timeline that it takes to production here. It can be decades. You can have the greatest new drill hole, 1,000 meters of great copper equivalent, but you've got to drill these things off. And then you've got to do the metallurgical test work, and then you've got to do your environmental permitting and baseline, all along making sure you've got good community relations and social license to get something up and going. So to have a project, I think, queued up, and there's a few of them, within our group and a few externally as well. And I think to meet that sort of coming supply gap that we're all visioning in copper, they're all going to be needed.
They are. Do you see yourself staying independent of other companies within the group, or is there, because you've got other copper projects nearby?
Yeah.
What's the best way to play it?
Well, there's some good synergies potentially between the long-term development at Jose Maria. I mentioned they're a little further ahead. So they've just submitted their ESIA application to the Argentine authorities. They're now in the permitting pipeline. Next steps for them are going to be nailing down some fiscal stability terms with the Argentine government, and first and foremost, making sure they can get US dollars out of the country. But I think all of that will be positive momentum for Filo as they move towards construction. Roads, power, water, other infrastructure is going to be brought to the district on their dollar, all benefiting the long-term development of Filo. So the oxides at Filo sort of stand on their own. It's the pre-strip to whatever we'd get into. It's going to be a slightly different processing route. Whether or not there's some longer term synergies with, let's say a combined sulfide processing facility or whatnot, yet to be seen. And, I think if you were a major mining company looking for the next copper growth district with projects that are ready to go, coming in and taking a look at this as a district area play would be something pretty smart to do.
Right. And so how do you time the rollout of what you've got to do next? You've got some money left over from last year. Obviously, the PFS numbers look attractive, certainly in terms of the volume of it. You're going to need more certainty around the economics for the market. So what's happening this year?
Drilling. So, the past couple of years, we started exploring at depth. And last year in particular, we put out a hole 32, which was 1,009 meters of 0.95% copper equivalent. So pretty exciting. Intercept, globally significant. One of the key things we need to do before we start advancing the engineering further is understanding the size and shape of the geometry of the underlying sulfide deposit, at least as much as we can, so that when we place surface infrastructure like leach pads and crushing facilities, that we get them in the right spot and we don't do something silly that sterilizes, let's call the longer term development here. So there's some, I think real value, not only in potentially proving up the tonnage and adding some upside through the drill bit here, but also a better understanding of the geology. So we're drilling now. We've got some big step out holes to the north, and we're also going to tighten up some of the drill spacing around that good result from last year with a view towards potentially being able to establish an initial inferred resource on some of the deeper stuff. And then we'll be at a decision point probably this summer. Have we done enough with the drilling? Do we see more valuable drill targets that we want to keep at that process? Or again, the optionality at Filo, we can retrench and with better understanding now focus on advancing that oxide project, moving towards feasibility study. And this is something that could be up and in construction within 4.5 or 5 years.
But what are you juggling with there? Because why not skip to that point now? It's big. It's already big. You want to make it even bigger, and then make a decision about how you move forward with the oxide portion of it. So, what are the variables here? Why spend the money?
M&A is never a strategy. You have, if something pulls together and one of the big players is keen on this company, then that would be a great outcome if it drove value for our shareholders. But we want to make sure that if something like that happens, that they're paying up for what we think we know we have in the ground. And at this point in time, the board and management was on board with trying to understand the size of what we're sitting on here, so that if someone came knocking on the door, we didn't give up too much. And that's something that we've been able to do effectively through equity over the past couple of years.
So how much more money are you going to spend to be able to allow you to have the conversation the way that you want?
Well, our hope is that by the end of this year's drill season, we will have learned enough. We can't keep on diluting shareholders by putting $40 million into the ground every single year. So at some point in time, we need to transition and shift, and hopefully that time is coming up. But who knows? Filo is a remarkable system. Every time we put a hole in the ground, whether it's 2 kilometers to the north, we're intersecting something, and it's a good problem to have. But there's no indications that we've sort of managed to drill out of the system yet.
It lends me to believe that you are more focused on preparing this for sale, because otherwise that becomes a very expensive phone call. You're spending a lot of money to have that phone call, which seems to be what you want to do. Given the nature and the makeup of the rest of the group, aren't you going to be copper producer? Let's not forget there's a lot of gold and silver in there too, based on the PFS. But don't you want to be big, meaningful global copper producers?
Yeah, I think everybody does that. That would be the goal. But the exploration that we're onto right now is pretty exciting. So I guess in terms of timelines, focus on getting this season past us, and I wouldn't be surprised if the board and the decision was then made towards refocusing on that oxide project, sequencing in behind the milestones that are happening at Josemaria to the north of us, and then potentially transitioning a build team off of that project to then work on Filo as the next one.
Because it's just one of the most asked questions when we get the questions sent in to us was, are they serious about being miners, or is this just a structured finance play? Your share price has gone up, but I think there's a lot to do with what's happening with the copper price recently, right? So which then also suggests to me that there's some uncertainty as to what it is that you're really focused on and what's important to you, and therefore what investors should be buying into. So
our focus is on creating shareholder value, and for the moment we think that can be done through the drill bit, at least this season. As we transition, for sure we'll be moving towards looking to put this into production. And I think one of the huge differentiators for a group like the Lundins and a backing like the Lundins is that you take a look at a big project like this sitting in a junior company, and lots of people would say, well, okay, great plan, but how are you really going to be able to finance a $1.3 billion build? I encourage people to look at the Lundin Gold scenario in Ecuador. That's roughly, call it $1 billion raise. They got Newcrest in as a strategic partner. They managed to piece together a bit of a stream, selling some of the silver and the gold forward, an international debt package, raised a bit of equity, and here they are, bought that asset for $240 million, and that's well over $1 billion company today. So certainly executable within the broader group, and that's something that we could look to copy.
Yeah, but the Lundin name buys you some credit, right? Because the history and the track record and so forth. But the basic rules are still the same. You've got to communicate more clearly to the market, and I think that's what they're asking for in terms of they know you've got something good. What are you going to do with it? When are they going to benefit? What's the upside? Or are they coming along for the long-term ride? I think that's I'd love some kind of clarity on it. Like you said at the start, we probably would like a deep-pocketed partner. Okay, that's nice. Have you had those conversations?
Well, we're always in corporate development style conversations. And, the past couple of years, or this past year in particular, has been a little challenging for groups to get up and do things like site visits and whatnot. So, we've got our core storage facility in northern Chile, and we've had a couple of groups through there. But for sure, as you start seeing sustained copper prices above $3.50 into $4, as you start taking a look down the majors and their development pipeline, I anticipate that we'll start getting a little more knocks on the door at Filo. Now, whether or not that makes sense, or whether or not it remains something that we think we can get more value for shareholders by pushing this forward ourselves, those are decisions that are in front of us. And I'm fortunate, I think, to have a group and a backing behind the company at the board level, and people who have done this successfully, have navigated this type of thing successfully. Do we build it? Do we sell it? Do we partner? What makes the most sense here?
And is there a timing component to this? Obviously, the prices, long time highs here. Do you expect it to go further? What are you seeing long term?
The copper price?
Yeah, because that's going to inform your decision making, right? Do you sit around and wait, we'll do some drilling for a year because we expect it to go higher? That'll be a much more interesting conversation because we've got more of it in the ground, we think, and higher prices. What are the variables that you are toying with?
Yeah, we're generally pretty bullish within the group on where copper is going. I think, some pretty impressive themes with respect to decarbonization, electric vehicles pushing forward. It's definitely sort of plays into that green metal, narrative. And I think in any world that you look at moving forward, copper is going to be, a huge part of that. So, I think for sure we're keen on copper staying above 350, for the near term, and maybe a little bit longer than that. So I think at those prices, these projects, Filo del Sol, Jose Maria, start to look pretty attractive.
Okay, you have the usual conversations with people sort of seeing where you are with projects, but do you think money gets cheaper with this green thematic? Because a lot of the funds are now not investing in specific areas, and they've got to deploy capital somehow. And again, we've spoken to a few fund managers this week and last, and they're trying to find not only good projects, which meet the fundamentals of good mining projects, but hit the green thematic, the green investment thematic too.
Well, I think we're seeing a huge increase in investors' emphasis on ESG performance. Even, I guess, a few years ago, obviously, it would have applied to the senior producers, anybody who was making significant amounts of product. But we're seeing that trickle down market, and even at our stage. So people want to take a look at a story and see that you've started off on the right foot with respect to community engagement, with respect to your environmental baseline, thinking a little bit about how you're sourcing your supply chain, and making sure that you're setting the company up for success in the sort of ESG world. And again, that's, I think, a great differentiator for the Lundin Group companies. We have the reliance of the Lundin Foundation. This is a group of people that have helped guide training programs, have helped guide education programs, the implementing IFC performance standards and alignment with those. So a wealth of knowledge and experience to rely on that side to help make sure that these companies are set up properly.
Right. And what's happening in Argentina? I mean, at the moment, there's a lot of noise going around about doing business in Mexico. The president there has been innovative with the way that he's approaching things. Argentina has had the history of being a difficult place to work. How's it with you guys?
We've been, we love working in Argentina. The family's been there for 30 plus years. Adolf Lundin ultimately was involved in the Bajada Alumbrera copper project, which is one of the last big copper projects developed in Argentina. The team there then moved on and ultimately found Veladero. That was Argentina Gold, again, subject to a big hostile takeover, homestake, ultimately Barrick. Veladero is now operating, 500,000 ounces a year of gold. So a big economic contributor to San Juan province. Our team, many of the sort of senior country managers from our group were junior geologists on that Veladero discovery. So we're comfortable in Argentina. We've been there a long time. Obviously, lots of noise federally, ups and downs, and debt defaults and that kind of thing. But I think they're on the right track. I think they're making some of the right decisions with respect to encouraging foreign direct investment to come into the country. Jose Maria in particular would be a huge boon for the mining industry in Argentina as that project rolls forward. It's 4,000 some odd jobs coming in, a $3 billion capital investment. And the Argentine authorities have been really keen on mining and on taking a look at mining as a potential contributor to help improve their economic situation. So yeah, it's a positive place to work, and we're thrilled to be there.
Okay, and just finally, just to remind me, resource update when?
Probably by the end of the North American summer. Yeah, so we'll finish off our drilling. We've got rigs on site now. Usually our drill program wraps up in March. We've made a decision to extend through April, and should have deep results coming out over the next, call it 3 or 4 months into the summer, and then piece together hopefully an initial inferred resource on the deep sulfides, and then we'll see where we go from there.
A plan. You need
Yeah.
A plan will materialize. Fantastic. Okay, well, Jamie, appreciate that. So I didn't want to spend too much time on the PFS. I think you've talked about it ad nauseum in the marketplace. It's fantastic numbers in there. Drilling seems to be the focus, and I think what the market is wanting from you after that point is some clarity as to how this business moves forward in whatever shape or form that is. So appreciate your time today.
All right, thanks, Matt. And I guess just some takeaways for your listeners. Filo del Sol, we've got some drill results coming up. This is shaping up to be probably one of the largest undeveloped copper, gold, silver projects in the Andes. We have a strike of about 5 kilometers, kilometer deep holes. We will have learned a lot more about the deposit this season, with a goal towards then ultimate decisions on how we take it forward and move the oxide project towards feasibility study. So a bunch of near-term catalysts, and I think a dearth of good quality copper investments. So I hope your listeners pay attention.